Morning, morning. Why meditate? Why meditate? Well, I've meditated every day for decades. And what I've come to realize is that any motive that you come at meditation from is going to be good. Meditation is all good. The Transcendental Meditation Organization did some powerful research into meditation to try and take it out of a religious context and put it into a more scientific context. And what they found is that people who meditated on a daily basis, their blood pressure was lower, they had physical symptoms that could be measured that improved the functionality of their body. And also they expressed feeling calmer, feeling more peaceful. But also, the same organization did research. They got 1,000 meditators to Washington, D.C., which at the time had a lot of gang violence, murders, and general mayhem going on in the streets. And they got these 1,000 meditators to meditate for a month. And the statistics were very clear that just 1,000 people meditating coincided with a drop in the crime rate and a general increase in the well-being of the population. And then so that's for your health, you meditate. Then it's for the benefit of others and the collective consciousness that you meditate. But then there's another thing that they discovered. They discovered that 10% of the people who practiced their technique, which is basically repeating a mantra on the in-breath and repeating a mantra on the out-breath, 10% of them said that through meditating, they had profound realization that could be called spiritual. Realization about the true nature, the deeper self, the true self. Now, why was it only 10%? Now, I put that down to the technique because I think that if you practice with the right instruction, with the right guidance, it's much more than 10% that have a profound realization. Meditation really is the key and the way to remove suffering. We're suffering all the time. Now, when terrible things happen, we know we're suffering. When we don't get what we want, we know we're suffering. When we're in emotional distress, we know we're suffering. But the Buddha, he said, it's all suffering. Life is suffering. And I never really understood that. Yes, some of it is, but some of it isn't. But what he was pointing to was that we've got so acclimatized to suffering that we don't even realize that it is, because we don't realize what it would be like with something more. Suffering is the fact that you drink a glass of beer and it comes to an end. That's suffering. Or the second glass of beer doesn't taste as good as the first one. That's suffering. Or you're having a great time and it ends. That's suffering. Or people you love don't love you. That's suffering. The very fact that things change, the very fact that everything changes, that's suffering. And that is the condition of life in this domain, suffering. How do we get beyond that? How do we go beyond suffering? And meditation is a key part of that. Because meditation accesses us Simply and easily. It's not a difficult thing. Quite often you meet people and they say, oh, yeah, I've tried it, but it didn't work for me. My mind's too strong. I'm always thinking. I can't stop thinking. And they give up. Yes, to start with, you may find when you sit and be still that there's a lot of chatter going on. Why? Because most of the time you're talking to yourself. All day you're chattering to yourself. If that chatter was printed out and you read through it, you would be embarrassed. If other people could hear you think and chatter away to yourself, you'd be embarrassed, because most of it is nonsense. In a whole day, how much of that chattering is worth keeping? Not much. And yet, that's what we do. And that chattering locks us into our mind. And in our mind we have an identity. And that identity causes us suffering. Because primarily it's not who we are. Who we think we are is not who we are. Who we think we are, supported by constant inner chatter, is actually very limited. And by identifying as the psychological self, by identifying as who we think we are, we miss out on a whole world. There's dimensions beyond the thinking level. Now, this isn't a new idea. The Buddha, after all, was 2,500 some years ago. And he was saying this very, very clearly, and it hasn't changed. There are scriptures older than that, the Vedic scriptures, which talk of exactly the same thing. 5,000 or even older. The Bible, in the book of Psalms, in the whole Bible, as far as I know, there's only 2 places where it tells you how to actually experience God. Because that is what meditation can bring you. Only 2 places. One is in the book of Psalms, where it says, very simply, be still and know that I am God. Simple instruction, be still. Now, interestingly, I was looking this up, and in the Hebrew, the exact translation from the original Hebrew of the Old Testament Psalms was, let go. The actual word means let go, be still or let go. And then you will know that I am God. How amazing. But who does that? You would think that Christians would follow that instruction and understand what it takes to be still. Still your body and still your mind. What happens when you do that is wonderful. There is the peace, again a biblical reference, that passes all understanding. The peace that passes all understanding, so extraordinary, so wonderful, so essential, so fundamental to what life actually is, this incredible peace that all movement, that all noise, that all happening takes place in, completely beyond the capability of the mind to understand it. But nevertheless, it can be experienced just by being still. Now, when we don't own our mind, it owns us. When we don't own our mind, it owns us. It's the unconscious, the unresolved unconscious, that drives our mind, that drives our life, unless we take ownership. We take ownership by being present and awake to what's in this now. When we don't do that and fall back into the momentum and the river of thinking. Those thoughts are actually informed by our unresolved, unconscious self. But as soon as we wake up to that fact, we can own or use our concentration, our attention, and place it in a place where, for as long as that focus is there, goodness, peace, presence, and love blossoms and unfolds and unfolds. And with that comes a profound understanding from direct experience about who I am and what life actually is. Humanity's gone as far as it can go in the wrong direction, governed by greed. And what is greed? One master said, everybody's infected by it. Everybody's infected by greed. And what really is greed? Greed is the mistaken idea that if I have more of something, then I'll be happy. If I have more of something, then I'll be complete. If I have more of something, then this void or this itch will be scratched and this void will be filled. But of course there isn't any amount that will do that. I once asked a very, very wealthy man, I said to him, you live in a world of billionaires and people, prime ministers, ministers, and people with great influence, the top end of society. I said, what is it that you know that you think I probably wouldn't realize? And he said, that's easy. He said, what you don't get is that at the top of the pyramid, the greed is off the planet. It's absolutely off the planet. You would think that the more you got, the less greedy you became. But actually it's the reverse, isn't it? Many times I've wandered in places like India and received tremendous generosity from people who have very, very, very little. So, we've gone as far as we can go in that direction. What is it that will fulfill us? Where does kindness come from? Everybody's got kindness in them as a potential. Everybody's got generosity in them as a potential, but how to activate that? Generosity isn't a quality of your mind. Kindness is not a quality of the mind. If the mind produces kindness, it's for some reason. But kindness is not for a reason. Kindness is because it is. And this is the whole point of meditation. Meditation is us taking back ownership of who we truly are. When we identify as the mind, as a psychological self, which is who we think we are, we suffer. And we keep on suffering until it becomes normal, and we think that's what life is, which it most certainly isn't. That is not what the blue sky is telling us. That's not what nature is telling us. That's not what the flowing rivers are telling us. That's not what the flight of the eagle is telling us. That's not what the billowing cloud is telling us. Life is much, much more. So the first thing that meditation does is it brings a distinction between your mind and what we could call your heart. There's a difference. There's no peace in your mind. Your heart is peace. There's only conditional love in your mind, but there is an ocean of love that is your heart. So meditation allows us to make a transition out of a mentally based reality, which is pretty grim in all circumstances, and come into a heart-based reality, which is not supported by thought. You can still think, obviously, but you become quieter. And by practicing meditation, by meditating, you become quieter and quieter within. Now, if you've been doing a practice for decades and you haven't become quieter, then you need to look elsewhere. Because the mind is tricky, and it can build a meditation cave in your own mind and have you go there every day, but you won't get any realization from that. Meditation is being attentive to awakeness, and that awakeness grows and blossoms and quietens and silences your mind so that you can feel the presence of your own existence, and beyond that feel the presence of life itself, and to realize how the two are one. And obviously meditation, for some, and perhaps all eventually, will lead to enlightenment. Enlightenment is complete awakeness. Not dreaming you're awake, but actually being awake. When you have a sleep dream, when you're actually in the dream, you feel that you're totally awake. There's not a question of, oh, I'm dreaming. Sometimes there is, but generally there isn't. But then when you wake up, you go, my God. And it lingers for a bit, the dream. And then you go, oh my God, I was dreaming. And now you realize that everything in that dream was made of the same substance, the substance of dreams. And all the values that the different things had, you gave them those values, because they weren't actually real to emanate any value. And meditation shows you that the same thing is true in this world, that we're dreaming that we're awake, whereas we could be awake dreaming. In other words, being awake and just enjoying what is, and having thoughts and desires arise in us, we're not holding them as if they're going to be what's going to complete us, because we already are that completeness consciously, and we're awake to that. But as we're still in the world, what would you love? Oh, I'd love this, and it just turns up, and there's no obstruction. We're not in our own ways anymore. So meditation allows us to put down what we're not, and allows a great blossoming of what it is we are. Meditation is not the property of any religion. It has been in the loving embrace of religion, and it's in some ways that's been a good thing, because it's maintained the quality of practices and of ways of doing it, and over generations that's kept going, and that's a good thing. But it should be understood that it's not the property of Buddhism or the property of Hinduism or the property of any other religion. That it's possible to have a full realization of the self and not have any affiliation to any religion whatsoever, because it's actually who we are. So meditation is the realization of the natural state. If you put all that is not natural down, the psychological self, the internal chatter, the crazy psychological self, you put all that down, do absolutely nothing except be present, and that is meditation. People practice meditation, and then at some point they do meditation, they are meditation, the natural state. What is the natural state? Are there angry babies? No. Are babies born thinking? No. Why are babies so happy? Because they are the natural state, gurgling in joy. Yes, they cry when they need something, but basically they're happy. That place remains in us, but we've come a long way from it. And meditation, wonderfully, is the way back to it. And the best, if you want to do meditation, the best thing is to find someone who has accomplished something from it, who's realized it. And with their help, they can reflect that in you. But that's not essential, it's just helpful. So be still and know. Not with your mind, not concepts, not understandings, but a knowing. Be still and allow yourself to emerge in the ocean of knowing, of connectedness, of presence, and ultimately of love. Meditation brings you into the field of unconditional love. And you're then centered in your heart, and you move through this life into and from your heart, living in a heart-based reality. Then this world appears as heaven on earth, and that can happen really quickly. You know, I could be going for a walk around Glastonbury where I live, which is just so beautiful, and I can be in my mind thinking about something in the past or projecting into the future, and suddenly realize I'm doing that, still my mind, focus, returning to my heart-based reality, and then suddenly I'm walking down the same road, but it's transformed. I'm in heaven. I'm seeing what actually is. And in case you haven't seen, this planet is a heavenly planet. It's heavenly. It's perfect. It's glorious. If my mind is quiet and my eyes are open. I recommend meditation for children. I recommend meditation for everyone. Some meditation techniques are better for some people, some are better for others. But the natural state, in every case, is the greatest comfort. And then living from that place, which takes time, but it happens, you suffer less and less and less, and when you suffer, you know why you suffer. It's not a mystery, and you certainly realize that it's not how life actually is, that there's an option to go beyond suffering, that there's a place inside us that is completely peaceful always. There's a place inside us that's untouched by the traumas and the dramas of the past. And meditation is about returning there and staying there and coming from there into this life. So I encourage anybody and everybody to do this, especially at this time, because there's so much anxiety. Anxiety doesn't work itself out, it has to be put down. The psychological self never gets fixed, it has to be put down. You're always going to be crazy where you're crazy. But there's a place where you've always been sane and sound and whole and untouched by all that's happened. And that place calls us. And when we return to that place, it feels like victory. It feels like coming home. It feels like the greatest success. It feels like treasure found. It feels like the relief of 1,000 lifetimes of suffering. And this possibility is there for everyone by virtue of the fact we're alive. Be still and know that I am God. How wonderful. In this sense, the best is yet to come. So, thanks for your attention and being here. And if you want to have a reading with me, a life reading, where we look at issues that may be issues or questions and generate breakthroughs, then I'm available for that. PM me or contact me, and we can have some time together. I wish you well. Have a beautiful day.